My name is Sarah. I'm 31 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. I own a small company, Monroe Studio, specializing in designing unique living spaces, from apartments to cafes. I'm not wealthy, but I earn enough to support myself, my husband James, and our incredible 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, the light of my life. While we're not from an upper-class background, my parents, Robert and Eleanor, back in a Texas suburb, always wanted people to think otherwise. I was raised in a family where appearances were everything. My father ran a well-known furniture store, and my mother always carried expensive handbags, speaking in polished, calculated words. To them, success was about admiration, not peace of mind. Outsiders saw a model couple, but inside, love was never equal. Especially for my younger brother, Michael. From an early age, I learned effort didn't guarantee recognition. When I scored a perfect grade on my 8th grade math exam, Mom simply said, "Good, you did what you were supposed to." But when Michael got a B+ in history, the whole family threw a celebration with cake and cheers. I watched, understanding Michael didn't have to try to be loved. He just had to exist, while I was the opposite. If you've ever felt overlooked in your own family, subscribe to the Lifestories1 YouTube channel for more stories of finding your worth. From an early age, I learned that my family's values were rooted in performance and external validation, not quiet effort. Michael never had to try to be loved. He just had to exist, charming, well-spoken, naturally attracting attention. I was the opposite. I studied hard, worked diligently, excelled academically and creatively, but my efforts were often met with indifference. When I chose architecture and design as my path, interests that truly spoke to my soul, my parents, Robert and Eleanor, were less than enthusiastic. They had always envisioned a more conventional, prestigious career for me, something like law or medicine, fields they believed would garner more external admiration. When I told them I had been accepted into an architecture program in Chicago, my mother barely nodded. "That must not have been easy," she said, her voice flat. "But try your best." There was no congratulatory word, no proud smile, nothing that acknowledged the years of hard work it took to get there. And yet, when Michael got into a local community college, they threw a massive farewell party, hired a live band, and flooded social media with photos captioned, "So proud of our beloved son." It was a stark, public reminder of where I stood in their eyes. I learned to stand on my own at a young age, realizing that seeking their approval was a futile exercise. I expected nothing from them, emotionally or financially, and over time, the initial sting of their neglect faded, replaced by a quiet determination to build my own life, on my own terms. I poured myself into my work, focusing on my studies in Chicago, and then moving to Denver to build my design company, Monroe Studio. It started from a small, shared rental office space, but with hard work and dedication, it grew. It wasn't a massive corporation, just my own space, designing living areas that aimed to evoke emotions and bring peace to clients. It was mine, a testament to my own effort and vision. It was in Denver that I met my husband, James. It was a March afternoon while I was surveying a model apartment for a new project, mapping out how to transform a sterile box into a warm, inviting home. He was an electrical engineer hired to install a smart lighting system. We talked about colors, light, and how a room could influence a person's emotions. We connected over a shared appreciation for bringing thoughtful intention into spaces. A year later, we were married, choosing a small, intimate ceremony with people who truly celebrated our happiness. Then, our daughter, Chloe, was born. She had a smile just like James's, open, warm, full of light, and curious eyes just like mine, constantly observing the world around her. The first few years after Chloe was born, we weren't financially stable. Running a small design firm and James working at a construction company meant our income fluctuated, sometimes lean, sometimes better, but rarely enough to feel truly secure. We chose a small apartment near a park in Denver, a place where we could hear the sound of children laughing through the window in the afternoons, a constant reminder of the simple joys in our life. Chloe grew up healthy, energetic, always carrying a picture book she loved, filling our small apartment with her laughter and endless curiosity. We were happy, genuinely happy, cherishing the life we were building together. A life built on mutual love and respect, a stark contrast to the world I grew up in. There was only one thing I hadn't managed to do yet: get full health insurance for our family. The cost was high. The monthly premiums felt like a significant burden on our unstable income, especially after covering all our other expenses. And since all three of us were healthy, vibrant, without any pressing medical needs, I kept telling myself we could wait a little longer. After the next big design project is secured, I'd promised myself. Once James gets a raise, we'll do it. I always thought we had time, that our youth and good health offered us a buffer, a margin of safety that would allow us to catch up financially before needing comprehensive coverage. I had no idea that hesitation, that seemingly small decision to delay, would lead to a moment that would change my life forever, a moment that would force me to stand before my parents, stripped bare of pride and independence, in utter desperation, only to hear words that I still remember, word for word, like a brand burned into my memory. I once thought I had grown numb to being overlooked in my own family, immune to their indifference, but as it turns out, sometimes parental neglect isn't just about being forgotten at dinner. It can be a cold, sharp blade cutting deep into the trust you thought had long since faded, revealing the true, devastating cost of being unseen. Life in our small Denver apartment near the park was filled with love and the sound of Chloe's laughter. A world built by James and me, deliberately distant from the polished facade of my parents' life in Texas. Yet, that carefully built world began to tremble one afternoon in the middle of last autumn. Chloe developed a cough, the kind that often comes with the changing seasons. At first, we didn't worry. She was still playful, still asking for James's mac and cheese every night, still burying her head in her picture books. We thought it was just a common cold seeping in with the cold wind through the cracks of our small apartment. But then the coughs wouldn't stop. They worsened at night, waking her up, leaving her clutching her small chest, gasping for air. We took her to a nearby clinic. The doctor said it was likely mild bronchitis, prescribed medication, and told us to monitor her. He seemed reassuring, but I caught a brief, worried glance he gave Chloe, a flicker in his eyes that felt like more than just casual reassurance. 2 weeks later, the medication hadn't helped, and Chloe started getting exhausted. Each step she took felt heavier than the last. One afternoon, she was drawing at her small table when she suddenly sat down on the rug, her face pale, whispering, "Mommy, my heart is beating too fast." I rushed to her side, holding her, feeling her skin cold and clammy, my own heart pounding with a growing, terrifying fear. James drove us to the city hospital. The drive felt like an eternity, the usual city traffic replaced by the frantic pace of my thoughts, gripping Chloe tightly in the back seat, my hands shaking uncontrollably. They ran blood tests, X-rays, and CT scans, a blur of sterile rooms and hushed voices. We waited in a cold, white room, under harsh fluorescent lights that made the air feel heavy with dread. Nearly 3 hours later, the doctor returned, holding a thick file, his face so serious that I had to grip the armrest of the chair to stay steady. "We found an abnormal mass in Chloe's left lung," he said carefully, his voice calm but direct. "It's most likely benign, but its location is pressing against her airway. If we don't operate soon, her condition could worsen quickly." A ringing filled my ears, drowning out his words. James stood frozen beside me, unblinking. I could only manage one question, my voice barely recognizable as my own. Does she need surgery right away?" The doctor nodded. "We recommend proceeding as soon as possible, within the next 3 days." He looked at us, hesitating slightly, his gaze softening. "The estimated cost for the surgery and post-operative care is approximately $98,000. I froze. That number hit me like a physical slap in the face, brutal and unforgiving. $98,000. The painful realization crashed down on me. We didn't have health insurance. We had planned to sign up, had the application sitting on the counter, but every time I saw the monthly premiums, I kept telling myself, just wait a little longer. After the next project is secured, once things are more stable. I always thought we had time, that our health was a buffer. But now, in a single devastating moment, I realized sometimes a single moment is enough to render all plans meaningless. James squeezed my hand, his eyes trying to stay calm, though I knew he was just as overwhelmed as I was. "We'll find a way," he whispered, looking at the doctor. "Please prepare everything for the surgery." The doctor nodded, handed the paperwork to a nurse, and left the room, leaving us alone with the terrifying number and the ticking clock. We had about $15,000 in our savings account, painstakingly saved over years. It wasn't enough, not even a fifth of what we needed. We called the bank to request an emergency loan. They denied it. Our credit score wasn't high enough in their system. We posted on social media, hoping friends would help spread the word, praying for a miracle. But time was too short, the amount too high. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by Chloe's hospital bed, holding her small hand, listening to each weak, uneven breath in the dim glow of the nightlight. Her face looked heartbreakingly pale. I pressed a kiss to her forehead and stood up, one thought consuming me. I couldn't let Ava lie here, waiting in vain, while I did nothing. My pride, my years of building independence, my carefully constructed emotional distance from my parents, all of it crumbled in the face of my daughter's fragility. I pulled out my phone and dialed the familiar number back in that Texas suburb. My mother's voice answered, light but cold, surprised. "Why are you calling at this hour, Emily?" she asked, using my old name from the previous story, a name that felt foreign now. I took a deep, shaky breath, swallowing my pride, all of it. "Ava is in the hospital," I said, my voice urgent, pleading. "She needs emergency surgery, Mom. We don't have enough money. Please, just a part of it. I'll pay you back." There was a brief, agonizing silence on the other end before my mother sighed, a sound of irritation. "Well, this is really bad timing, Emily," she said, her voice returning to its polished, calculated tone. "You know next week is your father's and my 40th wedding anniversary celebration. Everything has been arranged, so many guests have been invited. It would be so inconvenient to postpone now." I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, the years of neglect flooding back, but I pushed it down for Chloe. "Mom," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "I'm not asking you to cancel your party, just a little. Chloe is your granddaughter. She's in critical condition." Her voice turned stern, the carefully constructed facade of warmth hardening into cold stone. "Emily," she said, definitive, final. "You already know this. We can't tarnish the family's reputation over a personal problem. I'm very sorry, but I can't help you." I couldn't say another word. The pain in my chest swelled, not from being rejected, but because the last fragile sliver of hope I had clung to was brutally crushed. I hung up, tears streaming down my face, and returned to Chloe's bedside, wrapping my arms around her small, frail body. If my own family could turn their backs on their own granddaughter, I whispered to myself, my voice thick with pain and a rising, cold resolve, then from this moment on, I had absolutely nothing left to lose. I would save my daughter, no matter what it took, and without ever begging them again. The phone call with my mother, Eleanor, crushed the last sliver of hope I had carried. But in the face of Chloe's fragile breathing and the ticking clock, I couldn't simply give up. A cold, hard resolve began to form beneath the pain. I would save Ava, no matter what. And I would make one last, desperate attempt, swallowing every ounce of pride I had left. I knew Michael's pre-wedding party was happening that weekend, a lavish affair funded by my parents. Perhaps, seeing me in person, seeing the desperation in my eyes, the medical records in my hand, they couldn't turn away. I remember thinking, they are Ava's grandparents. They can't ignore this. Not this time. After nearly a sleepless night by Chloe's side, I put on a dark coat, tied my hair back, and got into James's old car, gripping Chloe's medical records tightly. I drove from Denver to that Texas suburb, a place that felt both familiar and utterly alien now. When I arrived, the driveway was packed with expensive cars. Soft music drifted from the backyard, mixed with laughter and the clinking of glasses. The house was lavishly decorated with white flowers, gold ribbons, and sparkling crystal lights. It took me a few seconds, standing amidst the opulence, to fully understand. Today wasn't just a party. It was the rehearsal dinner, the pre-wedding celebration for Michael and his fiancée, Natalie, the daughter of a wealthy real estate tycoon. An event reportedly costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I stepped into the grand foyer, immediately feeling the weight of stares from the elegantly dressed guests. No one offered me a drink or asked where I had come from. Their gazes brushed past me as if I were a misplaced server who had wandered into the wrong section. My desperation was a foreign language in this world of calculated appearances. I spotted my mother across the room, laughing with a group of older guests, a champagne flute in her hand. I walked straight toward her, my steps unwavering despite the trembling inside me, stopping right in front of her. "Mom," I said, my voice urgent, raw. "Please, give me 5 minutes. It's important." She looked me up and down, her expression momentarily displeased, as if I had interrupted an important speech. "Emily," she said, using my old name again, her voice impatient. "I'm entertaining guests. Can this wait?" I shook my head, my voice trembling but firm. "No, it's about Chloe. She needs emergency surgery, Mom. I'm begging you, just help with a portion of the cost. We've already sold everything we can." She hesitated for a brief moment, her eyes flickering towards the guests, but then they turned cold, hardening like stone. "Emily," she said, her voice dropping to a low, cutting whisper, "do you know what today is? This is Michael's pre-wedding celebration. Everything has been planned for months. Couldn't you have chosen a better time?" I swallowed hard, pulled Chloe's medical records from my bag, and opened them in front of her, pointing to the doctor's urgent notes. "Mom, please, read this. The doctor said if she doesn't get the surgery soon, Chloe may not survive. We need $98,000. Mom, she's your granddaughter." The music seemed to slow, and I noticed some people around us had started to listen, their laughter fading. A couple standing nearby stepped back, giving us space, their faces shifting from polite interest to unease. My mother glanced around nervously, then lowered her voice further, leaning in, her words dripping with disdain. "You're embarrassing me, Emily. This is not the place to discuss this. I'm very sorry, but I can't help. The money has already been spent. On catering, the wedding dress, the band. Where do you expect me to find nearly $100,000 now?" I turned and saw my father, Robert. He was standing beside Michael, a few well-dressed men. As I walked toward them, hope a fragile, dying ember in my chest, my father frowned. "Emily, what's going on? Did you come here to cause a scene?" "No," I said directly, my voice regaining a little strength. "I came to ask for your help. Chloe needs surgery. I just need a portion of the cost. Please, Dad, she's your granddaughter." Michael let out a quiet chuckle, his voice light as air but sharp as a blade. "Are you serious, Emily? Because you didn't plan ahead. Now the whole family has to bear the burden? I'm about to get married, and you expect me to cancel everything? Don't be so selfish." I turned to Michael, locking eyes with him for the first time in years, and in the emptiness behind his confident smile, I saw the culmination of all the years of favoritism. "I'm not asking you," I said, my voice low but firm. "I just hope you still have some conscience left." Dylan shook his head and raised his champagne glass, turning back to the men he was talking to. "I'm focused on my future, Emily. Everyone has their own problems. Chloe is your daughter, not my responsibility." I turned back to my parents, my voice trembling, the pain now a raw wound. "I'm not asking for anything for myself. I'm asking to save Chloe. She is the blood of this family. If family doesn't stand together in hard times, then is it even a family?" My father sighed, then turned away as if I were nothing more than a passing breeze. "Emily, don't embarrass us any further." I stood in the middle of that grand ballroom, surrounded by shimmering lights and people who once called me the good daughter, Michael's sister, Robert, and Eleanor's child. But tonight, they only looked at me with unease, pity, or worse, cold indifference. I nodded, the bitter truth undeniable. I tucked the medical records back into my bag and walked out of that lavish mansion, the place I once called home. Every step on the stone pathway felt like a blow to my chest. When I got into the car and sat down, the tears finally fell, not from pain, but from the stark, crushing realization. To them, an extravagant party, a perfect facade, was more important than a child's life, even their own granddaughters. I was no longer the Emily who kept trying to earn scraps of love from people who didn't know how to give it. From that moment on, I vowed to do whatever it took to save my daughter, without ever begging them again. I returned to the hospital in Denver with a heavy heart but a hardened resolve. Ava was still lying there, her lips dry, her breathing weak. James held me tightly as I told him everything. Every rejection, every condescending glance, the moment I walked out of that mansion like a stranger. He didn't say much, just nodded, then whispered in my ear, his voice unwavering. "We'll save our daughter. We don't need anyone else." The next morning, we took action. Matt put his beloved pickup truck up for sale, the truck we had driven across states on our honeymoon. I listed my work computer, printer, even our living room sofa on classified ads. We managed to gather nearly $29,000 in 3 days. It wasn't a small amount, but we were still far from our goal. I started calling every old friend I could think of. Some didn't answer, some hesitated, but there were also those I would never forget. Anna, my college friend, now a music teacher, sent $500 with a message. "I know this isn't much, but it's my entire savings for this month. Chloe will make it through." Travis, a young employee who had only been at my company for 4 months, walked into my office at noon. He placed an envelope on my desk. "I have $320, he said quietly. "I was going to buy a new laptop this morning, but I think Chloe needs it more." I couldn't say a word. I just hugged him tightly. We received small contributions from friends, neighbors, even people I had only met once in my life. People who weren't bound to me by blood, who owed me nothing, yet still reached out to help. Even so, we were still nearly $40,000 short. I started considering taking out high-interest loans, despite knowing the risks. I couldn't sleep, my heart constantly racing as if it were about to burst. And then, one evening, as I sat in Chloe's hospital room, James's parents, Henry and Grace, came to visit. They lived in a small home in the southern suburbs of Denver, a house they had cherished for nearly 30 years. They weren't wealthy, just hardworking people. I expected nothing more than a hug and words of comfort, their presence a quiet solace in the storm. But as they entered the room, Henry pulled me aside into the hallway, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Emily," he said, his voice deep and unwavering, "tomorrow morning, you and James need to come to our house. I have something to discuss." I looked at him, confused. "What is it?" He didn't answer. He just patted my shoulder, then glanced toward Chloe's hospital bed, where she lay small and frail, and said, "Our granddaughter can't wait any longer." The next morning, James and I went to their house. It felt emptier than usual. The living room couch was gone, as were several paintings from the walls. Before I could ask, Grace walked out with a cup of hot tea, placed it on the table, then handed me a stack of papers. I picked them up and skimmed through them. A property transfer contract. The final line burned into my eyes. Sale price $136,000. I stared at them, stunned. "Mom? Dad? Why?" Grace took my hand, smiling gently, her eyes filled with unwavering love. "You and James need the money to save Chloe. This house is just a material thing. We can rent another place. But Chloe only has one life." Henry nodded. "If it were you or James in this situation, wouldn't you do the same?" I broke down, not with loud sobs, just silent tears falling onto Grace's hands, the same hands that had once knitted sweaters for Chloe's first winter, the hands that had baked holiday treats every year. They weren't my parents by blood, but they chose to stand by me, to sacrifice everything when no one else did. 3 days later, we had the full amount needed. The hospital scheduled the surgery immediately. The operation lasted 6 hours, hours that felt like 6 years. I sat in the waiting room, clutching Chloe's beaded necklace, a birthday gift she had made for me with the words, "Best mom ever." When the doctor finally walked out, he nodded and gave a small smile. "The surgery was a success. Chloe will recover. She's incredibly strong." My legs gave out. I collapsed into a chair, covering my face as I sobbed, not from despair, but from the overwhelming relief that hope was alive again. Chloe had made it through, thanks to the kindness of strangers, friends, and the immeasurable sacrifice of the people who chose to be her true grandparents. After Chloe's successful surgery and discharge from the hospital, a wave of exhaustion washed over me, not just from the sleepless nights and financial strain, but from the sheer emotional weight of the past months. But beneath the weariness, a fierce fire ignited inside me. The pain of my birth family's refusal, starkly contrasted with the immeasurable love and sacrifice of James's parents, Henry and Grace, and the kindness of friends and even strangers, transformed me. I was no longer just working to support my family. I worked to repay kindness, to honor sacrifice, and to prove to the world, and especially to those who had turned their backs on us, that I didn't need them to succeed. I had everything I needed right here: James, Chloe, and the incredible people who stepped up when my own blood turned away. I started each day at 4:30 a.m., fueled by this new resolve. I restructured my entire company, Monroe Studio, from management systems to marketing strategies. I threw myself into relearning everything I had once overlooked due to being too busy simply trying to keep up: financial management, negotiation skills, digital marketing. By day, I took clients to site visits. By night, I sketched designs, drafted quotes, and sent emails across the state. I even enrolled in a real estate negotiation course on weekends, determined to sharpen every possible skill. My small interior design firm, once sharing office space with a nail salon, started landing bigger projects: cafes, studios, a spa chain in the northern suburbs of Denver, then a boutique hotel in Aspen. Word spread quickly about my dedication and the transformative power of my designs. A year later, I signed a contract to design interiors for a luxury apartment complex in a new commercial district, a project worth over $1 million, 10 times any contract I had ever secured. It was the turning point that transformed my company from an obscure name into a recognized industry leader. Modern Spaces magazine wrote an article about me with the headline, "Sarah Monroe, from a simple mom to a woman shaping the spaces of thousands." They asked me what had driven me to this success. I looked straight into the camera, my voice unwavering, filled with the quiet strength born of pain and gratitude. "I once begged my family to help save my daughter's life," I said. "They refused. I don't blame them anymore, but in that moment, I learned that I had to be the only pillar my daughter could rely on. And to do that, I had to become stronger than anyone who had ever tried to break me." The interview went viral on social media, resonating with people who had faced similar struggles. Some admired my resilience, some were moved to tears. And then something I never expected happened. I received an invitation to appear on Voices of Resilience, a well-known talk show that shared inspiring stories of ordinary people overcoming adversity. They flew me to New York. During the recording, I told my entire story, from the years of being compared to Michael, to the night I knelt metaphorically before my parents, begging them to help Chloe, to their cold refusal, and finally, to the incredible sacrifice of James's parents and the kindness of friends that saved my daughter. The host, a seasoned and sharp-witted woman, looked at me with deep respect. "Sarah," she said, "if you could say one thing to the people who abandoned you in your darkest moment, what would it be?" I was silent for a few seconds, a lifetime of pain and acceptance swirling within me. Then I smiled, calm and steady. "Thank you," I said. "Because of them, I no longer blindly seek approval from others. And because of them, I found my real family, the people who, despite not sharing my blood, were willing to sell their home to save my child's life. I never mentioned any names during the show, never pointed fingers directly. I simply told my truth, raw and unfiltered. But to those in that Texas suburb who had witnessed me knocking on that mansion's door that day, who had seen me turned away like a stranger, they knew exactly who I was talking about. After the episode aired, my story spread like wildfire. Local news outlets began sharing articles, then smaller TV networks invited me for interviews. People connected the dots from the details I had shared: the Texas suburb, my father's furniture store, my brother's real estate career, the mention of a $300,000 engagement ring in follow-up articles inspired by my story. It didn't take long for them to find out that I was the daughter of Robert and Eleanor Monroe, owners of Monroe's Living Furniture Store, and the sister of Michael Monroe, the real estate broker. The true media storm had begun when an anonymous account reposted a clip from the talk show with a scathing headline that went viral. Parents spend $300K on an engagement party, refused to save dying granddaughter, and now their daughter is a millionaire. The post gained over 500,000 shares in 2 days, and the consequences for my birth family were swift and brutal. The consequences of my story going viral were swift and brutal for my birth family. Within hours of the talk show clip and subsequent media coverage, Monroe's Living began receiving a flood of one-star reviews on online platforms, scathing comments detailing my story. Customers canceled their orders. Some suppliers announced they were cutting ties. The same people who once shook hands with my father, Robert, and toasted champagne at his parties quietly removed him from their contact lists because no one wanted to be associated with a family that had turned its back on its own blood to protect their reputation. A week later, I received news that the store had to temporarily close due to financial and legal reasons. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel satisfied. Just an odd emptiness, like an old chapter being reopened, laid bare under the sun, with nothing left to hide. And then there was Michael. He was once the golden child, the pride of the family, the one who stood at elegant gatherings, delivering charming speeches. But now, whenever his name appeared online, people only remembered one thing: the man who laughed in his sister's face when she begged for her daughter's life. Natalie, the fiancée once seen as his perfect match, didn't say a word publicly. She simply erased all their wedding photos from social media, removed her engagement status, and a few days later, filed to call off the wedding. I heard from an old acquaintance that Natalie had read the articles, then confronted my parents directly. When they didn't deny anything, she immediately left the apartment she shared with Michael and moved back in with her mother. Michael couldn't handle the fallout. His business connections dropped him one by one. He called me one night, his voice rough, desperate. "Emily?" he choked out, using my old name. "What did you do?" "I said nothing," I replied, my voice calm. "You went on TV. You made everyone think I'm heartless." I exhaled slowly. "I didn't make anyone think anything, Michael. I just told the truth. I didn't twist anything. If the truth makes you feel ashamed, then the problem isn't me." He was silent. Then he hung up. I thought that call was the end, but it wasn't. A few weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother, Eleanor. It was on pale yellow paper, the writing neat but slightly shaky, as if her hands were no longer steady. "Emily," it began, "we have lost everything. Your father is selling the mansion. Michael is unemployed. Our family name is in ruins." The words were stark, direct. "I am not writing to blame you. I am writing because I don't know what else to do. We were wrong. I know that. But please, if you have any mercy left, help us." She asked for $200,000 to save the house. I read the letter over and over that night. I thought about that mansion, the place where I was turned away in the middle of laughter and expensive wine. I thought about Chloe's fragile breaths in that hospital bed. I thought about the aged hands of James's parents, Henry and Grace, the ones who, despite not sharing our blood, had sold their home to save their granddaughter. And I realized some losses cannot be repaired with money. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't feel joy at their downfall, but I also no longer held resentment. It was simply that now I had a new family, the ones who showed love through actions, not empty prestige, and I had learned it on the most important lesson of my life. Not everyone you are born to will walk with you until the end. A part of me knew this wouldn't be the last time they reached out to me, but next time, I would be the one setting the terms. Despite the pain they had caused, I decided to help them with the money for the house, but strictly on my terms. 2 days later, at the agreed time, they arrived at my company in Denver. The conference room on the third floor was bright with winter sunlight. On the table sat a sleek black suitcase. Inside was exactly $200,000, neatly stacked in bundles. When they entered, I no longer saw the commanding presence they once carried. My father looked frail, his hair streaked with gray, deep hollows under his eyes. My mother wore an old coat, no longer the elegant woman who once scoffed at my dress for being too plain. They sat across from me, hesitant, unable to find the words. I opened the suitcase and turned it toward them. "This is the money you need," I said, not raising my voice but making sure every word was clear. "Not because I still have feelings for you, but because I don't want anyone to sleep on the streets, not even the ones who abandoned me." My mother reached out for the suitcase, but I stopped her. "Wait," I said, my eyes cold but steady. "Before you take this money, I want to say one thing." They both looked up at me. "From the moment you walk out of this room, I will no longer consider you my parents. No contact, no visits, no requests. This is the last time I will help." My mother burst into tears. "Emily, you can't!" "I can," I cut her off. "And I have to, because I need to protect the people who are truly my family. James, Chloe, Henry, and Grace. They sacrificed everything for me." I looked at them, their downcast eyes, their muffled sobs. "And you? What did you do when your granddaughter was dying?" No one answered. I stood up and signaled to my assistant, "Please escort our guests out." My father clutched the suitcase as if holding on to the last remnants of his pride. They walked past me without a single word of farewell. As the door shut behind them, I looked down at my hands, not trembling, not unsteady, just calm, as if the final chapter had finally been turned. That night, when I told James and Grace what had happened, no one criticized me. James simply held my hand tightly. "You did the right thing. You are stronger than anyone." I nodded, but I knew deep down this wasn't a victory. This was just the ending of a bond that had fractured too many times to ever be repaired. I had given, but I had also chosen to keep what was most precious to me, my peace. And sometimes, that's all we need to move forward. After that final meeting at my company, I never heard from my parents again. No calls, no letters, no signs that they wanted to reach out. And strangely, I didn't feel empty or regretful. Maybe because I had truly let go. I once thought that when the time came to say a final goodbye to them, I would feel guilt. But in reality, the only thing I felt was relief. Relief that I no longer had to exhaust myself proving my worth to people who had never truly loved me. Relief that I had made my choice. I chose the people who had reached out to save my child, not the ones who turned away to save face. I didn't hold resentment, but I didn't forgive either. Forgiveness, to me, isn't forgetting. It's refusing to let the past dictate my present. And my present now is a home filled with laughter, a stable career, and a life that isn't lavish, but is rich with gratitude. After everything that happened, I understood something more deeply than ever. No one succeeds alone. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how strong I became, Chloe was still alive today, not just because of my willpower, but because of the kindness of those around me. People who didn't share my blood, yet chose to stand by me when the world turned away. I wrote down the names of every person who had helped me in a notebook, not to keep track of debts, but to remind myself never to forget. When my company started making real profits, I didn't think about luxury cars or mansions. I thought about the people who had given their last dollars without expecting anything in return. I invited Anna, the old friend who had sent me $500, to my company headquarters. I handed her a thick envelope, and when she opened it, her eyes widened. "I know you never asked for anything," I said, smiling, "but I want you to use this to finally start the music school you always dreamed of. You saved my daughter. Now it's my turn to help you rebuild your dream." She hugged me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her embrace was enough to say everything. I also visited Travis, the young employee who had once given me his meager savings. By now, he had been promoted to lead designer, and I awarded him a full scholarship to a prestigious design institute in Chicago. His eyes welled up with tears, but they were filled with determination. I knew, just like me, he would turn his gratitude into something extraordinary. As for my in-laws, Henry and Grace, I owed them a lifetime. I remembered vividly the day they moved out of their old home after selling it to save Chloe. They didn't cry, they didn't complain. They simply said, "As long as Chloe is healthy, anywhere is home." When my company was invited to design interiors for a luxury housing development, I quietly kept track of real estate transactions. After months of negotiations, I bought back their old home, the very house they had once sold to save their granddaughter from its new owner. I didn't say anything right away. I waited until Grace's birthday. That day, I brought the whole family over and hosted a small celebration. Chloe had drawn a giant card with wobbly letters. "I love you, Grandma and Grandpa, because you saved me." After dinner, I handed Grace a small box. She opened it and found an old house key, along with a copy of the property deed. Her eyes trembled, her hands shaking. "Sarah, what did you do?" she whispered. I simply smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I just wanted you to come back home." Henry stayed silent for a long moment, then gripped my hand tightly, as if trying to say 1,000 words with just that one gesture. A few months later, I made a big decision to build a new home for our entire family. Not a lavish mansion, but a spacious, warm house with enough room for Chloe, James, Carol, Henry, and the second child we were expecting. I wanted my children to grow up in a home filled with love, where every meal was accompanied by laughter, not judgmental stares or heavy silence. Our new home sat on the outskirts of the city, overlooking rolling hills that turned white with snow in the winter. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of Chloe and Henry chatting in the kitchen, Grace tending to the small garden in the backyard, and James flipping through new blueprints in his office. I needed nothing more. I didn't live for revenge, but I lived to remember and to repay kindness in the fullest way possible, because I believed that gratitude given at the right place and the right time was the most powerful way to heal wounds and open a new chapter, a chapter of true happiness, needing no approval from anyone but my own heart. I had lost one family, but I had found another, and that was the greatest gift life had given me. Life moved forward in a peace I once thought I would never have. Chloe was healthy and happy, back in school. James managed the company's new branch. Carol and Henry lived with us, bringing a warmth that truly made our house a home. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. At Lifestories1, we share powerful, real-life experiences that remind us of our strength and resilience. Don't miss out on more inspiring journeys like this one. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can join our community and be the first to watch our next video. Your support helps us share more incredible stories. Subscribe to Lifestories1 today.